do a marker. Solid clap. Feeling good about this interview.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? It's Kelly Betz. I'm sitting here in downtown Columbia in Peace Park, where we had war in Peace Park a decade ago, almost to the day. And joining me today, it's an honor to be sitting with.
What up? The Saurus here. You already know what's good. How you doing, Kelly?
I am feeling awesome. I'm happy to have the event behind me.
Same. I completely agree with that. Also, it feels really good to have battled, like Steve and I, XQZ and I, obviously we battled today, and like have the battle out of the way early and to be able to go about the entire remainder of the day like with zero battle anxiety. It feels so good, man. It gets draining having to wait until 8, 9, 10 p.m. or later to battle. Gets so draining.
And the better you are, the more you have to wait. It's like, oh, you won. Congratulations. You're the best here. You're on at midnight.
Exactly. You're on at the end of the night. So you can't enjoy any of your friends battling before you. But last night I got to enjoy every battle because I didn't have to worry about my own stuff yet, And then I got to just go back to the room and run my bars. It felt really good, man.
I've hosted over 100 battle events. And I've been to 2. I went to like Don't Flop Chicago and a KC event ever that I've just not had to run.
Word. Oh, wow. You need to do that more just to reward yourself with like relaxation.
Yeah, and I just was like, all right, no, just standing here.
I've gone to a handful of events, especially West Coast events. Like when I lived in Cali, events where I wasn't on the card, I would definitely still go attend, like to go see my friends battle and whatnot. And there is such a different feeling of relaxation showing up and being like, oh, all of you are battling and I don't have to worry about anything. And like people are just like, hey man, let's get a drink. Let's roll one. Let's do that. And I'm just like, yeah, I can enjoy every second of this. Oh, it's my favorite. I love it. Being able to enjoy events from fan capacity is so much fun, man.
Yeah, it's rare. I have some, well-prepared, well-researched questions for you, and I usually try to keep things natural. That's all out the window because I want to nail this out the park. And here's what I wrote. So I'm going to quote you, and I believe on Battle Rap Resume, you said the following. You said, I was ahead of the curve. I figured out the science.
Yeah, in the freestyle era, I was definitely ahead of the curve. Like when I first emerged into the Bay Area battle scene, there was, I mean, you could just kind of tell that I guess I was like working at on a more advanced like grade than the majority of the MCs were, and it was just figuring out the science that I was referring to. Lush had a really good take on it in the Fresh Coast DVD, the documentary, where he basically said that I was taking some sort of observational act, combining that in a rhyming way with a person's name, usually a celebrity's name, kind of like how Steve made fun of, and then combining that name with another like negative attribute or something like that. James Vanderbeek on 8 grams of tweak type of thing. And that was the sort of science that I had figured out to it. I was taking what I had sort of seen Idea do, which was just the you look like so-and-so, and I was adding another layer or two on top of that until that just became the way I was like almost trained to think whenever I would like approach battles.
Did acid play a role in getting your mind there? And what did that look like?
I can't say that it didn't. I stopped doing hallucinogens like before I really started taking freestyling and battling super seriously.
That's how acid is. Like everybody talks about the Beatles and Hendrix. It's like, oh, you do the acid, and then the next season you have the ideas.
There's like lingering, yeah, absolutely. Because when I first started like experimenting with any hallucinogens, mushrooms, and acid, I was in a punk band when I first started, and I was like a guitarist and a bassist in a punk band.
Now we're gonna talk about that the whole time.
No
Sorry.
worries.
Interview.
When I was like 12 and 13, yeah, I was playing guitar and playing bass in these small little local punk bands. We were super inspired by the Seattle music scene at the time, so we were all sort of on the grunge wave, rocking flannels and, playing 3-chord power chord progressions and fucking yelling about our teen angst and such, you know what I'm saying?
I'm so happy you saved this till like me interviewing you. Yeah.
Word. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, the same music era too that you're, I'm sure, very familiar with, and then it evolved from that stuff into like Pennywise and NoFX and whatnot.
The whole skate wave.
Exactly, because I was just some skater punk, you know. But through all of this, I was still like dabbling with hallucinogens. And then what I was kind of doing, especially as a teen, I would like pick up an instrument and I would get bored after a year or two, and I'd be like, on to the next. I did it with guitar, did it with piano, I did it with the bass. And then after I put the bass down, I got like really curious about freestyling and hip hop more. There was a few people at my high school who were rapping, and there was a thing in my hometown that started taking place in like 98, 99 called Freestyle Friday. And it was just a group of MCs who would show up. They had, at first it was just an actual tape with instrumentals on it and just a boombox. And these guys they would meet up at a spot in town. 100+ people would show up and listen to these freestyles. I was completely mind blown by it. So I was like, I need to teach myself to be able to do this, because I was dying to get that same sort of crowd reaction. By the point I got involved, that Freestyle Friday thing had evolved into something where they had turntables now and were like spinning live instrumentals at a coffee shop in my hometown. And it was still Freestyle Friday every Friday night. And then one night I just decided, like, all right, I'm going to go down and I'm going to give it my shot. And like in hindsight, I probably waited like several months to maybe even a year too long to emerge. Like when I came in, I was ready to go, and I like smoked the entire thing. And the dude I looked up to the most, my boy Steve, Invincible Steve is what he went by back then, IS. He was like the guy that I looked up to at the time, and he came up to me after and was like, yo, man, like, what have you been waiting for? Like, this is what you're capable of? And I was like, yeah, I just like wanted to feel like I was ready, you know what I'm saying? And he's like, you've been ready. And then those guys kind of like took me under their wing, and yeah, it all kind of evolved from there. I got into like Freestyle Fellowship, Soul Sides, Black Alicious, Quantum, Latyrix, all those dudes.
Oh, yeah.
And just kind of like immersed myself as fully in the freestyle culture as possible, because I was like, I need to learn how to do that. And I felt like the acid brain was giving me a sort of, like, I think it taught me, the best way I know how to explain it is it sort of, the way it all clicked for me one time when I was dosing was like, I was able to see it backwards. I was able to see the punchline while I was autopiloting the setup. And it just kind of, it like created a domino effect that way. That's like the only way I ever knew how to explain the way I was able to freestyle how I did. I was like, I just see it backwards. Like one day I was dosing super hard on some gel tabs, and fucking, I just realized like, oh, it's about seeing the punchline first. And then like, I know enough things that are going to rhyme with whatever I'm going to create as the punch. Like my word bank was extensive enough, you know? So it's just about autopiloting there, but in a sensical way, like, you know, it can't be complete gibberish leading up to it, but yeah, I don't know, it's really weird. It definitely helped. It definitely opened the door.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear about. I want to talk about, I love throwing in clips of specific things. You versus, what is it, El Greco or El Greco? Okay, so that's such a weird environment. Can you talk about that?
I was at my junior college, actually, Monterey Peninsula College, where I went to school. That was like, I think it was right around 8 Mile-ish time, where a lot of places, especially on the West Coast, they were just like, hey, let's throw a battle rap event and have a prize. And that just sort of became a thing. So I remember my college doing it, and I'm just like, well, yeah, I have to go win this thing. It was for like, whatever, some sort of like money prize, like $500, and then like a Shure mic, like a live microphone. Yeah. And I was like, fuck, I want that stage mic too, you know what I'm saying? So I definitely like went there and won it. But El Greco was the first person I battled. That footage my little brother filmed like with his own camcorder that straight up took like VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Super old school. This had to be, I mean, it couldn't have been later than 02. I want to say it was 01 or 02. Because it was when I was in junior college, and I graduated high school in 99 and took 2 years off. So it was either 01 or 02.
Let's show a clip of that now.
And El Greco. And yeah, I was wearing my Chris Webber jersey, my Royals jersey. That was the first, I think, filmed freestyle battle I had ever done. And it was definitely the first of a handful of battles I had ever done, like in front of an audience, organized battle. Like up until that point, I was used to the Freestyle Friday setting would sort of, sometimes freestyles would evolve into battles. We would take shots at each other. And that
sure, yeah. I come from a really similar thing.
Yeah, for sure. But never organized until it was either that one or there was one around the same time frame where I actually ended up battling Tantrum in the finals. And we went like 7 or 8 rounds in the finals, and they just couldn't call a winner because we just would not run out of bars. So we just agreed to split the money and just call it a tie because everyone was fucking exhausted. Me and Tantrum are like, bro, we're not going 8 rounds. Like, you either make up your mind or just give us both $100 and call it a night, you know? And yeah, so Tantrum's been around as long as I have. Yeah, that was all right around the same time frame, but those were probably the first organized battles of like, there's something of monetary value on the line here, there's brackets, it's like you actually saw, like, you know, Blaze battle format and Scribble, things like that, you know.
I feel like in my perception of your career, it then goes from just like, this is stuff at parties or this is hip hop, to then you're battling a jelly donut and a gay sailor, and it's much more like a spectacle, and it's battling for battling's sake. Do you want to explain where that happened and what that transition was like?
It was, okay, like when I was in my hometown in Monterey and I was coming up just freestyling and getting better at battling and realizing battling was something I wanted to do, I would enter anything local that I heard about, and there was a weekly local open mic / poetry slam in my hometown that I would go to every week. And I would either do like some written piece or I would freestyle something. Sometimes I would do like a mock battle with someone that wasn't judged or whatever. And then someone there, like one of the like house poets who was really good, my boy Hayden, actually, he came up to me and was like, hey man, he's like, I don't know if you're like mobile, but you should go up to Oakland and check out Tourette's Without Regrets. They do a freestyle battle like completely aside from the poetry slam, and it's just a really dope event to check out. And I was like, word, I'll definitely look into that. So then I went up there. I think I spectated once and like didn't say anything to anyone, just kind of went and checked it out, felt out the situation, saw a Rukusaki battle, saw Infinite battle, saw the command that they had over the Bay Area crowd and like what they were doing that was so effective. And at the same time, I was like, I think I can beat these guys. Like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this. So I went back the next month and entered, and I lost to Aruk in the finals. And then, or maybe it was the semifinals. And then I came back the next month and landslided through everybody. And even Jamie DeWolf was like, I've never seen anything like what you just did. He's like, you just came here, you battled every past champion to get to the finals to beat Aruku Saki, who was like our 6-month champion. And then whatever, I went on to win like whatever it was, 10 straight or something at some point, you know?
I think Infinite and Orokusaki perfectly demonstrate that transition in the era that you were at the forefront of, which is like people are watching it and in their head they're going, this is what hip hop is supposed to sound like. You're filling the mold and you're giving me what I think I should be getting. And then you come in and knock down all the pins like, yeah, but this is how you do it better. This is what it can be.
And yeah, and like this is more, because they were definitely, it made sense too in the Tourette's audience. They were on a much more positive note than I had ever seen a battle be. And I wasn't aware at the time that that was because of the Tourette's crowd and that you had to sort of be that way to win over the crowd. You couldn't be the cutthroat villain and win that crowd instantly. Like, they needed to warm up to you first. And then once they got to like you, then yeah, you could be the villain for sure. And that's eventually what I, sort of evolved. I was like the hero / villain because they loved rooting for me, but I mean, I was just take no prisoners.
Pushing it.
Exactly. I was pushing the envelope further than anybody. And, especially once I started winning multiple in a row, Jamie was like, well, I'm going to have to make it more challenging for you then, like as much as it can be. And that's when he like put me against guys like the Gay Sailor, when Jelly Donut was Gay Sailor, right, which is the hardest freestyle battle I've ever had to do because it's such a diverse, politically correct crowd that in order to make fun of the Gay Sailor character, I have to do it tastefully, but I can't ignore the obvious. So I have to sort of like poke fun at myself in the process, which is perfectly okay to do, and that crowd wants you to do to begin with, you know what I'm saying? And that, honestly, I think once I like won that battle, I was like, okay, this is like my crowd now. That was just, I felt like I couldn't lose in front of that crowd at that point.
So there's this confusing era that follows that early Tourette stuff, and there's a few events I could mention, but it's basically just the idea of dudes traveling the whole country to go to tournaments where there isn't like a DVD coming out and there's no YouTube. There's this weird time.
And just some obscure cash prize.
Yeah, maybe you could explain.
Wasn't like the usually whoever threw the event didn't have the full amount in hand. Like aside from Scribble and shit like that. Yeah. Like obviously those guys were as organized as could be. They had real sponsors. You never had to worry about a Scribble payment. But I mean, I had my fair share of like smaller battle events in Cali and elsewhere where it was like a guaranteed prize that then fell either significantly short or didn't exist at all.
XQZ just referenced a freestyle tournament I threw with Pompey where he got a nice glass of whiskey as the prize at the end of the night. Now, to be fair, at the beginning of the tournament, we were like, we don't have any money. You get whatever you want from the bar. But specifically, I wanted to ask you about lounge battles, just because everybody from Grind Time, it's the place besides Scribble where everybody from Grind Time's kind of there, but where the fuck are the cameras? And stuff is like openly written, or is it? Or it's
No, it was supposed to be, Lounge Battles was supposed to be a freestyle battle, but
exposed.
yeah, I mean, you just had, eventually I think it reached a point where so much of the field is aware of who their competition is going to be going into it. So I think it wasn't so much people writing for everybody ahead of time. It's more, I need to give myself an idea of who's going to be in the final four of this thing on this chance that I get there.
Yeah.
And then I need to be ready for those because that's where the money comes into play. And that's where you want to be as ready as possible. And it took me a while to even start viewing it that way. Like, I remember the first Scribble that I went to, I wasn't thinking or like premeditating lines or like heavily or anything like that. I was paying attention to who battled before me and who battled after me. And then I knew there'd be a 50-50 chance that's who I'd be battling next round. And I would try not to overthink it. But, I mean, the next year when I came back, I was thinking a little more strategically of like, okay, I'm paying attention to every battle going on around mine. I want to be aware of who both possible opponents are so I can be ahead of the curve to smash them when I get called up there next, because we're talking about 10K. Like, I'm not going to go up there and shit the bed for 10K. I'm gonna go up there and at least have like an idea of where I'm going to take things, you know?
So not that this was at all shitting the bed, because I've changed my mind more about this battle than maybe any other thing I've watched, 100 times. But I want to, no, actually, that's a great one. But I have a line I want to say, and I want you to explain what happened. How did his remote control car drove him so far? What the fuck happened there?
Switched up the wording. All I had to do was say, I can't figure out why this guy's remote control car drove him so far. It was just
How does he mouth it with you at the same time?
He had heard the line before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where? Were you freestyle bit?
It was in Frisco at the Freestyle Olympics, like 6 months before that or something like that.
And he's just so quick that he sees it coming. Or
also, what people don't know is Franco's entire pump him up rubber duck round that he had for me was a round that he had fully premeditated for Iron Solomon the year before, on the chance that he would have battled Solomon at Scribble. Kept it in his like little storage bank and then used it on me and at Scribble.
My other super esoteric Scribble question is this. It's unique in that people are like jumping the fuck around. Like the physicality of Scribble. Sure. People are like hopping full blown. Yeah.
Like the energy, it's hard to describe. I mean, the first time that I went there, the year I battled Justice, I think they said there was somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 people there. It's an energy that I haven't felt anything like. And when people are reacting, like you feel a wave react to a line, and it's like, oh shit, like there was nothing else I could do but just like jump out of excitement. I'm like, fuck, I just pulled that out of this many people. Like it was so overwhelming. And I was still like kind of trying to find my footing on stage, trying to like it. I mean, the energy alone though, it's really so overwhelming. And you have so much money on the line. There's just being high energy. But yeah, you're right. Like the hippity hop shit became, Justice, you see do it a lot. Bo Rat did it a ton. A lot of the West Coast dudes did it a ton. It's, I think a lot of it is just, is attributed to the crowd energy. You're just sort of feeding off this fucking wave of people. You say something and then it's just, God, and you're
it's
like,
almost like it hits them physically. Yeah,
man.
Like a fight video game. Like,
like when I said the good day mate, day late shit, I could feel the reaction to that, like at the end of the round. It was fucking crazy.
I never thought of like the perception of, I always thought of it as like what you guys are trying to do from the stage.
No, it was more of a response thing. It was like, it's basically being overwhelmed. Like, holy shit, not only did I just come up with that, but I pulled that out of this audience at the same time. It's mostly just like being overwhelmed and the energy, just not knowing what to do with the adrenaline, really.
I guess to jump ahead like a little bit here, Okay, for around New Year's of 2010, this was January 4th of 2010, you said, I should be holding the mic to me. Let me try that again. In January of 2010, in an interview that's like a phone call about gin with you and Lush and Disaster, and I don't even know why you're in the phone call. And first of all, that whole thing was like trolling. We don't have to get in that. Well, we don't have to get.
I said something I said something like Macy's is making a gin clock or something like that. I was like,
I couldn't make it through the whole thing.
I was like, I heard gin has a customized clock coming out that has. I was like, it has yellow hands and it's running out of time or something.
Whoa. Oh no. Okay, in that interview, so keep in mind this is like.
Shout out to gin.
Yeah, man, gin changed my life. Still. Anyway, so. Beginning of 2010, you said this, I want to do 12 battles in 12 cities around the world. So just at that time...
I would have been down to do it if I could have.
You did something like that. And
no... that year or something along those lines. I don't think it was all different cities, though. I feel like there was a couple of probably like Bay Area repeats or Cali repeats. But that makes sense. And I think I had also done like 2 or 3 battles in Australia or something like that. I mean, I definitely did 10 or more battles that year that I talked about it, but they weren't all in different cities.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like despite like the exact goal, it's really just you saying I'm going to be a world traveling battler and just do one a month or do as many as I can. And I don't think anybody was doing that yet. Nobody had thought, "Oh yeah, I'll just travel the whole world and get battles wherever I can."
And it was like we were able to, Chase and I, once I dropped my album too, Chase and I were able to like coordinate like mini tours around shit like that. So we booked like an Australia tour based around where we did like 6 or 7 shows. And then also I did 2 or 3 battles down there. Chase did 2 battles as well. We did the same thing in Canada after me and Ill did the 2-on-2 Grand Prix shit. We went on tour like as soon as that Grand Prix was over with for like 3 or 4 weeks or something like that.
That makes a lot of sense to not have one thing you're relying on, and because battles are amazing, but once it pops off, that's the performance.
Yeah, you know, and this way we were able to have, like, we had merch on hand with us, and cities that we would go to could negotiate either freestyle battles with us or things like that for while we're stopping through, you know, to create more of a draw. Oh, it was really helpful, man. But I mean, I think that was also 2010 when I said that in that interview. That was, I think, before a lot of people were really looking at it like business mindedly. You know what I'm saying? People were looking at it like, yeah, I want to book a battle and I want to battle someone. Whereas I was kind of like, yeah, I want to like do the same thing, but I also want to travel out of it, and I want to be able to, like, if I'm going to put this much time into it, I want to be able to at least partially sustain. I have to at least be able to treat it like a part-time job, you know? And then I was somehow able to balance that with the poker shit.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, do you think that playing poker and so being able to do something fun, or at least fun some of the time, like take a hobby, make it professional?
Having freedom of schedule helps a lot, for sure. Yeah. Like, just being my own boss is so helpful, because at any given time, if I book something, I can be like, all right, well, I'm just not going to play this week, and I'm going to focus, and I'm going to write. That's what I did for this. Like, it was perfect timing booking this, because World Series ended, you know, 2 weeks or so ago, so I wasn't consumed by tournaments or anything like that. Like, if this event would have been a week earlier, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I would have still been too consumed. So it was like the perfect timing, because the series is over. Now I don't have to, because for me, for the most part, the summer, June and July it can, and more often than not is where a majority of my yearly income comes from. Whoa. So I have to put like all of my focus into it. But then once it's over, back to, you know, all the freedom that I need. So I was able to do the battle and just, you know, check out of poker for a good 10 days and watch battles and get back in the mode.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's incredible.
I'm very fortunate to have that, like, the freedom to be able to do it.
Oh yeah, that's rare. I mean, I know people talk a lot of shit in hip hop about, like, yeah, the hustle and you got to make it, like, just all this talk. Yeah. And then they go and they, whatever, load stock shelves or whatever they do for real, you know, when they're not on Facebook. My last question is this. In a 2015 interview with Direct, you said, I have enough humility to keep moving forward no matter what. And my question is, besides humility, what does it take to prove yourself in 3 different generations of battling straight in a row?
Wow, that's a really good question.
That's why I had to read it. I usually don't do that, but I was proud of these questions.
You have to be very self-aware. You have to know when you yourself are either like improving or maybe deteriorating in any certain avenue, and then figure out where to pick up slack and sort of make up for it. You have to be aware of how the scene around you is evolving and what direction it's going in, so that you can not necessarily like follow the trend or stay ahead of the curve or whatever, but just you can stay current while still being true to yourself. I think that's probably the most important thing. Like, you still want to stay current. You still want to feel current and not like you're totally dated, but you also don't want to have people being like, well, now he just sounds like this guy because he's trying to stay with the times. I don't think that I've ever been guilty of that. I don't think anyone's ever been like, oh, well, now when I hear Thesaurus battle, I hear so-and-so. It's like, no, you've always heard me, no matter how the times have evolved and how my writing style has like it changed in whatever kind of subtle ways, whether it be like adding more layers to, you know, simple things, punching more often, things like that. But it's always, I don't think you can ever say like, it's like a bite from somewhere else because this person is what the times are now type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, like, for example, now you're seeing a lot of people or hearing a lot of people who people go, oh, that reminds me of twerk. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Like, I'm never going to be guilty of that. While I'm aware of all of the amazing things Twerk's doing, and he is a special, like, unique talent, I'm aware enough to where I don't think I need to sound like him to keep up with the curve. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that's my biggest problem.
A lot of, like, people do that. It's
if you go to a
noticeable in veterans, too. It's very noticeable. Yeah. And, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's still noticeable, and it's I don't know. To me, it's just not something that I'm comfortable with because I don't know. I've always rapped like me.
That's awesome.
I leave it to other people to rap like me instead of me rapping like other people.
Hell yeah. It's awesome to be able to sit down with you in this park, on this park bench. Yeah, it's been great having you out. Yeah. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
My man. Of course. Oh.
Smack the mic
Boom.
at the end.
Yeah.
No Coast, Kelly Betz. Should we do a Nardwuar and freeze as long as we can? So I can completely rip them off.